Thank you, Shrija, first of all, for inviting us. I'm Nitya. I lead investments at 314 Capital. We're an early stage fund based out of Bangalore. We manage over $500 million in AUM, and we invest across. Healthcare is a big focus area for us. Over the last few years, we've done a lot of work, not just within healthcare, but even at the realms of health tech in the country. And see, our view on healthcare has always been we're tackling three big problems. So, one, and it's no surprise, right? Numbers are out there. The NCD burden in this country is really, really high, and the spend on healthcare is really low. What makes India also interesting is that more than 60% of our spend is actually out of pocket. But at the same time, as a country, our healthcare outcomes are really compromised. So, and that's a deep question we've asked ourselves over the 5 years. What do we do to make patient outcomes better? And we focus a lot of our time and effort now to kind of solve for provider productivity, right? So I think over the next decade, the next leap that India has to take in healthcare, a lot of it will come from solving for productivity. So whether that's on the doctor side, whether that's on the nurses side, whether that's at the hospital level, right? So for example, we're investors in a company called Dozee, which is non-invasive remote monitoring patient setup. When we invested in this company, this was primarily more of a D2C product that we actually worked with to take them to hospitals. And today, Dozee is live in about 600 hospitals in India. We're taking this product live, right? So that's just one example of what we're doing. So I really like the question that you asked on innovation versus invention. Of course, as investors, we want to be on both ends of that spectrum, and we think that without marrying the two, we will not be able to leapfrog in healthcare. The second, I would say, area that we focus excessively on is how technology, how data can transform healthcare outcomes. So today, our realization has been that Indian healthcare data really absolutely sits in silos. So we've been working very closely in seeing, just like, for example, in ABDM, how can that impact health patient outcomes in the country, right? So whether that you integrate that with pair, whether that you integrate that at the clinic level, right? And what that transforms into. So that's another area that we're excessively focusing on. We're investors in a company called EkaCare, which is one of the largest private players on the ABDM ecosystem today. And the last is enabling patient outcomes, right? So whether that is AI-led health discovery, whether it is AI-led health patient management, whether it is wearables, that's an area that we spend actively a lot of our time on in identifying opportunities that can solve for end patient outcomes, not through an outcome lens, but actually through an adoption and engagement lens. So very fundamentally speaking, what our learning has been in healthcare over the last decade has actually been the fact that if you have to solve for chronic outcomes, it's actually a function of adoption and engagement as opposed to outcomes, because if you're able to solve for engagement, outcomes are going to follow nonetheless. So that's how we've looked at the larger world of healthcare today. See, and here I may have a counter view, right? Like a lot of companies that we evaluate in healthcare and health tech, we feel India will grow in an ecosystem manner. And to your point, right, I think if you're a healthcare company or you're a health tech company, you can't really put the hospital on the side and say, I will exist outside of you and deliver better outcomes. Because, the harsh reality of healthcare in India is that hospitals still originate not only demand, they also deliver patient care, right? But having said that, right, the way we look at things, and again, right, as I said, it could be counterproductive as well, is that how do you make that experience better? So can you even, and we think about fundamental risk. Can you make the access to a hospital better? Can you make it easier for somebody to navigate a hospital? Can you help somebody navigate their insurance policy better to get to the right hospital? So there are a lot of layers to like just enabling care, but at the same time, right, I would also play the devil's advocate to say that health tech and just how healthcare has to be reimagined in India has to be reimagined and I think I heard a lot of undertone of this conversation as well, has to be thought about in a very specialized manner, right? And to me, like I've been investing for 6 years, the first 4 years was very generalist healthcare. It is very exciting for me to now see that people taking a very specialist view on health. So if you just look at how funding has flown in the last has come by in the last 24 months, as I would say, a lot of focus on single speciality, a lot of focus on smaller care, multi-speciality. So I think, from the top, what I observe, is that the focus of investing is also shifting on, can I go to an Uttar Pradesh and make healthcare there better? Okay, first I need to develop to multi-speciality and then get to a single speciality point of view. Whereas in a tier one where multi-speciality has evolved, can I create smaller pockets of single specialization where I'm delivering a better experience for anybody who can. And again, right, it's a question of whether you exist on a premium or a mass. And it's interesting to see that ideas are popping up on both sides of the spectrum, supported by policy. And I think that's the third major shift, right? So for both of these spectrums to operate, policy has to play a very, very big role. Whether and we go very deep in like policymakers. We've been spending a lot of time with the folks in the EPDM ecosystem, and finally, like after 6 years of healthcare investing, I see momentum in hallways, and I think, and that I think is very exciting for us to see over the next 5 years how just healthcare delivery is reimagined in that context. First at the hospital layer, and then outside of hospital, and lastly, at home. I think, Vishal talked about whether that's, AI chatbots, whether that's at home healthcare. And the third spectrum of it is, of course, preventive. I feel as investors, as an ecosystem, we talk about preventive healthcare a lot. But with respect to just how now policy, how AI is shaping up, preventive healthcare is going to start playing a much larger role in the overall spectrum of how patient outcomes are achieved.